welcome to the Labor Force Podcast. Stories of the working class in a time of renewed labor militancy and awareness that capitalism is a rotten deal. I'm your host, Mike Strukin, proud member of New York State United Teachers. Greetings all. Let's talk about what's really going on with gas prices right now, because if you've been to the pump lately, you've already felt it. First, there was this Wednesday night.
Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict. This is yet more proof that Iran can never be trusted with nuclear weapons. They will use them, and they will use them quickly. It would lead to decades of extortion, economic pain, and instability worse than we can ever imagine. The United States has never been better prepared economically to confront this threat. You all know that. We built the strongest economy in history. We're going through it right now, the strongest in history. In 1 year, we've taken a dead and crippled country. I hate to say that, but we were a dead and crippled country after the last administration and made it the hottest country anywhere in the world by far, with no inflation, record-setting investments coming into the United States, over $18 trillion, and the highest stock market ever, with 53 all-time record highs in just 1 year. It all positioned us to get rid of a cancer that has long simmered. It's known as the nuclear Iran, and they didn't know what was coming. They've never imagined it. Remember, because of our Drill Baby Drill program, America has plenty of gas. We have so much gas. Under my leadership, we are #1 producer of oil and gas on the planet, without even discussing the millions of barrels that we're getting from Venezuela. Because of the Trump administration's policies, we produce more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Think of that, Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. And that number will soon be substantially higher than that. There's no country like us anywhere in the world, and we're in great shape for the future. The United States imports almost no oil through the Hormuz Strait, and won't be taking any in the future. We don't need it. We haven't needed it, and we don't need it.
Well, in any case, we've officially crossed that psychological line again. $4 a gallon. And not in some isolated pockets. This is the national average, the highest we've seen since 2022. Now, the easy explanation, the one you're going to hear over and over, is that this is just about instability overseas, that it's temporary, that once things calm down, prices will settle. But when you actually dig into what's driving this, it's a lot bigger than a momentary spike. This all traces back to the war, of course, involving the U.S., Israel, and Iran, and specifically what that conflict is doing to global oil supply. Because here's the key piece. A huge chunk of the world's oil moves through a narrow passage called the Strait of Hormuz, and right now, that system is severely disrupted. When that happens, doesn't matter if the U.S. produces a lot of oil domestically, and we do, oil is priced globally. So when supply tightens anywhere, prices rise everywhere. That's why crude oil has surged past $100 a barrel. That's why diesel is pushing well over $5 a gallon. And that's why everything tied to transportation, so basically everything in the economy, starts getting more expensive. And this is where it hits differently than people expect. Because it's not just about what you pay at the pump. It's groceries, delivery costs, airline tickets. It's the entire supply chain quietly getting more expensive in the background. That's how you get inflation sticking around, even when policymakers keep saying it's under control. And there's another layer here that doesn't get talked about enough. This isn't just a short-term shock unless the underlying issue resolves quickly. Experts are already warning that even if shipping routes reopen tomorrow, the global supply chain doesn't just snap back. It can take weeks or months to fully recover. So what you're looking at isn't just a spike. It's a system that's fragile. One geopolitical event, thousands of miles away, and suddenly millions of people are paying more just to get to work. And maybe the most unsettling part is how familiar this feels. Another crisis, another surge, another promise that it'll all settle down soon. But for millions of people, soon never really comes. just a new normal that costs a little more than the last one, starting at $4 a gallon. And that's not all. What about Easter baskets for the kiddos?
Filling your Easter baskets may cost you more this year. Chocolate prices are up again, forcing some candy makers to raise prices. News Channel 9's Ashley Cafaro has more on what you could expect.
If you're planning to fill Easter baskets with chocolate this year, you may notice higher prices at the register, but it all depends on where you go. From chocolate bunnies to chocolate eggs, Easter candy is flying off the shelves. But this year, some of those sweet treats come with a higher price tag. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says candy prices, including chocolate, are up almost 12% compared to last year, and they've jumped quite a bit over the past 5 years. At Hercules Candies in East Syracuse, the cost for dark chocolate is up 18%, milk chocolate 12%, and white chocolate 9%. But the candy store decided to keep their prices the same this Easter.
Last year I raised the prices because the prices went up because of cocoa plant diseases and climate change causing decreased production for chocolate. So there's a chocolate shortage going on. I didn't feel I could raise them again.
And if you haven't bought your Easter candy just yet, Hercules Candies says you might want to hurry before they run out. In East Syracuse, Ashley Cafaro, News Channel 9.
Staying with this theme, a Business Insider report highlights a warning sign known as the Walmart Recession Signal, which compares Walmart's stock performance to that of luxury retailers and has risen before the last 4 U.S. downturns. The indicator is now at its highest level since the global financial crisis, suggesting consumers are increasingly shifting toward cheaper goods, a pattern that often signals economic stress. Walmart stock has surged roughly 40% over the past year as shoppers look for bargains amid inflation concerns, and the WRS has continued climbing in 2026, partly due to anxiety tied to the Iran war. Economist Jim Paulson cautions that the WRS is increasingly advising caution about the U.S. economy, adding, quote, "My guess is the economy avoids a recession this year, but I'm becoming more convinced that a significant U.S. economic slowdown is unfolding." He also points to additional risks, including weakness in private credit markets and slowing trends in hiring, housing, and consumer spending, all of which reinforce concerns that a broader slowdown may already be taking shape. In other updates, a federal judge delivered a major win for the AFGE National Veterans Affairs Council by ordering the VA to reinstate its collective bargaining agreement covering more than 300,000 employees, while also demanding the agency explain why its actions should not be considered contempt of court. U.S. District Court Judge Melissa Dubose had previously issued a preliminary injunction restoring the contract, finding the union was likely to succeed in its lawsuit challenging the August 2025 termination and that workers would suffer irreparable harm without it. She rejected the VA's justification, determining the move was retaliatory against union speech protected by the First Amendment and likely violated federal law, while emphasizing that employees had already lost protections, voice, and representation. Despite the order, the VA made no meaningful effort to comply and even attempted to re-terminate the contract just before a March 27th hearing, prompting the judge to call the move a blatant disrespect for not just the court's order, but for the rule of law. Union leaders praised the ruling, with AFGE NVAC President Mary Jean M.J. Burke stating, quote, "VA workers did not choose this fight. The Trump administration brought it to them," adding that employees deserve a voice in their workplace and that the union will not rest until every VA facility in this country is honoring our union contract. AFGE National President Everett Kelly echoed that sentiment, saying, quote, "The VA told our members they had no union, and when a federal judge told them to stop, they tried to do it again mere hours before the hearing, but affirmed, AFGE is still here. Our members will not be silenced." And Indiana Governor Mike Braun joined locked-out union workers on the picket line outside the BP Whiting refinery on Tuesday, calling on the company to come back to the bargaining table. Hundreds of union workers have been locked out of the BP refinery since March 19th, after contract negotiations broke down. Since then, workers have been walking the picket lines. Quote, "I was glad to come out and support the effort," Braun said. "I built my own business in a little manufacturing town in the southern part of the state. It was a very simple formula. Put all your sweat equity back into it, you get good people to come along with you. You pay good wages, good benefits, you've got people coming to work for you." Union leaders have called the lockout illegal and said negotiations with BP have stalled for months. They claim the company has rejected their proposals on jobs, pay, and safety. Union members said they're prepared to stay out on the picket lines 24/7 until there's movement at the bargaining table. BP has said it has made a comprehensive offer and plans to continue operating the refinery with trained staff, adding that it does not expect disruptions to production. The company has said the lockout will continue until the union accepts the offer as submitted on March 17th. The union president said the company wants to cut around 100 jobs and lower pay for nearly all positions. Braun, who before becoming governor ran a truck body manufacturer and truck parts distributor, said he doesn't think BP is being reasonable by locking out its workers. Quote, "You should make the right decision by being an honest broker with your own employees, and if you're not listening to them, you're going to have trouble keeping them," he said. "Both sides have got the ability to make your case, but you're not doing it when you're not talking to one another." Meanwhile, the Teamsters announced a major victory after forcing Amazon to honor workers' right to strike through a legal settlement addressing retaliation against employees. The dispute centered on Amazon's practice of deducting unpaid time, or UPT, from workers who participated in strikes, time that functions as an attendance bank and can lead to termination if exhausted. Following a ruling by the NLRB that the policy was illegal, the settlement requires Amazon to restore the deducted time and ensure that workers nationwide can strike without losing UPT, covering all 1,300 facilities. Workers and union leaders framed the outcome as a breakthrough in ongoing organizing efforts. One worker stated, quote, "As Amazon Teamsters, we're the only ones who have ever successfully forced this company to respect the right to strike, while emphasizing that employees can now organize without losing their unpaid time." The union highlighted that nearly 10,000 Amazon workers have joined the Teamsters in recent years, using strikes, petitions, and public pressure to challenge company practices and win improvements in wages, safety, and job protections. Another worker urged colleagues to join the movement, saying, quote, "We are winning and will continue to force Amazon to respect its workforce in every possible way." That said, Trump's NLRB ruled that Amazon must negotiate with the union representing about 5,000 workers at its Staten Island warehouse, finding the company has engaged in unfair labor practices by refusing to recognize and bargain with the group. The union, originally formed as the Amazon Labor Union in 2022 and later aligned with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, has been seeking negotiations over pay, working conditions, and other issues. Of course, Amazon won't go this far, disputing the ruling, claiming the union election was improperly influenced by the NLRB and signaling plans to appeal, a move that could delay enforcement of the order. The company has also separately challenged the constitutionality of the NLRB itself. Labor leaders hailed the decision as a historic victory and a sign of growing worker power, marking a major development in the ongoing conflict between Amazon and organized labor.
Joining me now from the rally in St. Paul, Minnesota is Ezra Levin. He is the co-executive director of Indivisible, the primary organizer behind the No Kings protest. Man, Ezra, just incredible to see Bruce. Your reaction to what's happening on the ground there today?
Oh my gosh, Jacob, I don't think you've lived until you've been in a crowd of 150 to 200,000 people listening to Bruce Springsteen sing a song about the courage of those people in beating back an authoritarian force. It was emotional, it was powerful, it was inspiring. And I gotta say, you described me as a lead organizer. This is way bigger than me, way bigger than Indivisible, way bigger than any organization. This is millions of people around the world, literally on every single continent, in 3,300 protests around the world, demonstrating their own leadership, their own courage, and their own joy, as you see behind me.
Ezra, first time around in June, numbers were around 5 million and 7 million in October. You just used the word millions. Any indication of how big or how much bigger the crowd is this time around?
I mean, bigger, Jacob. That's what I'll tell you. So we had 2,100 protests for the first No Kings rallies in June of last year. Then we had 2,700 protests all around the world for No Kings 2. More than 3,300 protests all around the world this time. If Minneapolis and the Twin Cities and St. Paul are an indication of this, it's bigger all around the world. It's quite a sight to see.
Talk more about the energy behind the movement and how these marches and the momentum behind them has grown, not only since the first one, but with 220 days to go, if I have it correct, before the midterm elections. Between now and that fateful day, or would-be fateful day in November, what do you want the people on the streets today to go out and do?
Look, what everybody understands is it's not enough to wait 220 days to go and vote. This guy in the White House does not intend to just allow free and fair elections to take away his power. He is already talking about sabotaging the results of elections. He is sending ICE to airports as a dress rehearsal for sending them to the polling places in November. If we're going to protect this democracy, we've got to be organizing right now. So this should not be a landing pad. This should be a launch pad for future actions. The two things we're asking people to do is to meet in their local communities, to absorb all of this new energy, and then to prepare for May Day, a day where we exercise our economic power with no business as usual, no shopping, no work, no schools, because when it comes to November, after we win the midterms, we're going to have to protect those results, and that's going to be more than a one-day protest on a Saturday. It's going to look like what the people in the Twin Cities did to repel the full force of the federal government when they tried to use their secret police force to push them back, and they refused.
Ezra, the organizers like you are hoping that this is the largest protest yet, but I guess my question is a huge turnout, even if this is 9-10 million people, is that going to be enough to deliver a sustainable movement to create change here in the United States?
Look, Jacob, you know as well as I do, there's no referee in the sky that says you reached a certain number of people in the streets and therefore democracy wins and fascism loses. That's not how the real world works. Whether we are successful today or not depends on more than today. It depends on exactly what you're talking about. How many of these millions of new people coming out don't just sign up for national email lists, don't just plan to vote in November, but plug into their local communities to organize. That's what worked in the Twin Cities. It wasn't just protesting on a Saturday. It was neighborhood by neighborhood organizing, normal everyday people linking arms with their neighbors in order to fight back, non-violently, but powerfully for their democracy. So I hope what we see next is a flood of new people into local organizing hubs, and we build from that, both to get out the vote come the midterms, but also to protect those results so we can see some real accountability next year when we take the House and Senate.
Well, there you had it. The scale of the recent No Kings mobilizations matters, not just because millions of people showed up, though that part matters too. It matters because it felt like one of those moments where folks stopped treating politics like a spectator sport and start acting like they actually have a role to play. You could feel that shift, a bigger willingness to get in the streets, coordinate, to test what collective action looks like in real life. And when that happens, the question changes. It stops being, can people be moved? It becomes, what do you do next? That's where Ezra Levin's call for a nationwide May 1st general strike lands. This is being framed as an escalation, not just another symbolic day. That's the key point. A rally says we object. A strike says we can interrupt how this whole thing runs. Those are different levels of pressure. Now, when people hear general strike, a lot of us have two reactions at once. One is, yeah, that sounds powerful. The other is, hold on, is that actually possible? And honestly, both reactions are fair. A general strike is not simple. Labor law is restrictive. A lot of workers are not protected if they walk out. Plenty of people are in non-union jobs, precarious jobs. Jobs where missing even one shift can mean real damage. Rent is due. Kids need food. People can't just posture their way through that. So nobody should talk about this like you snap your fingers and suddenly the whole country shuts down. That's not serious. But what organizers seem to be arguing is also serious. If the political moment is getting sharper, then tactics have to sharpen too. May 1st, May Day, has that history in labor for a reason. It points back to the basic fact that workers have leverage not just as voters, not just as sign holders, but as the people who make everything function. And that's why the May Day Strong Coalition slogan hits so hard in plain language. No work, no school, no shopping. I like it because it's blunt. No fancy branding, no cloud of consultant talk. Just a direct idea. Withdraw labor, withdraw participation, withdraw consumption. If enough people do that together, even unevenly, even region by region, that creates a kind of pressure a march alone usually can't. It's also broader than a formal union action, which is important. No work, no school, no shopping recognizes that workplaces are one front, schools are another, and consumer refusal is another. Not everybody can strike in the same way. Some can take a day off, some can call in sick, some can refuse to spend, some can rally outside work sites, some can organize their shop for the next round. A real escalation has layers. So no, this is not just another protest date on the calendar. At least that's not how it's being pitched. It's a test. Can the energy from no kings move towards something with economic teeth? Can a protest wave become labor pressure? And maybe the honest answer is, we're about to find out. A big reason labor people are paying attention is the example of the Minnesota general strike. And I'm using that carefully because whenever history comes up, folks can get romantic real fast. But the basic lesson organizers are pulling from it is straightforward. Work stoppages can still move power. Not in theory, not as a slogan, in actual material terms. If workers collectively interrupt business as usual, they change the balance, even if only for a moment. And sometimes that moment is enough to force a response. That's the inspiration here. Not nostalgia for some perfect old labor era that never really existed, but a reminder that strikes matter because the economy runs on people showing up. We're told all the time that ordinary workers are powerless, that the only serious political action happens in courtrooms, donor circles, or election war rooms. Funny how often that story benefits the people already in charge. A strike cuts against that. It says power is also sitting in warehouses, classrooms, hospitals, transit systems, offices, stores, and job sites. And support is not just abstract. The outline here is clear that unions and labor groups are already backing or mobilizing around May Day Strong. That matters a lot, because if this were only an online call with no organizational roots, it'd be a different conversation. But when unions, labor councils, and worker organizations start engaging, even in uneven ways, it signals that this is being treated as more than a hashtag. Now again, let's keep our feet on the ground. Backing a mobilization is not the same thing as every union authorizing a walkout. Labor bodies move at different speeds. Their legal constraints differ. Their internal politics differ. Some can endorse actions publicly. Some might focus on rallies, sick-outs, teach-ins, or turnout support rather than a formal strike. Some rank-and-file workers may be ready before leadership is. Sometimes it's the reverse. Organizing is messy. That doesn't mean it isn't real. What it does mean is that pressure is being built now, in the present, instead of telling people to sit tight and wait for the next election cycle to maybe save them. And I think that's the real political shift underneath all this. Workers and organizers are saying consequences don't have to be delayed. If power ignores mass protest, then maybe it has to face economic disruption. If officials and bosses assume people will absorb every hit and keep the machine running anyway, a stoppage challenges that assumption directly. There's no guarantee here. A general strike call can outrun existing organizations. A one-day action by itself may not be enough. That's all true. But it can still mark a serious turn, because it puts the question of worker power right on the table. Not someday, not after permission is granted, now. And that's why labor's paying attention. Not because anybody thinks this is easy, but because they know what's at stake when workers decide to act like workers, not just spectators. So we'll keep watching where that goes, because I got a feeling this isn't the last time we're going to be talking about May Day or strikes or what real leverage looks like. Now let's tie that to what's happening right now in New York, because it's a perfect snapshot of a much bigger fight happening across the country. State lawmakers are once again pushing a simple idea: tax the rich. Not in some vague symbolic way, but in concrete terms. We're talking about higher taxes on people making over $5 million a year, higher corporate taxes, and billions in new revenue aimed at funding public services. And here's the key detail: this isn't fringe anymore. Both the state Senate and Assembly are backing versions of this. This is mainstream within the Democratic-controlled legislature. But then you hit the wall. Governor Kathy Hochul is resisting. Not because she says the idea is morally wrong, but because of the same argument you always hear. If you tax the wealthy, they'll leave. Take their money, move to Florida, and suddenly the state is worse off. That's the tension at the center of this story. On one side, lawmakers are looking at rising costs, strained public services, and a clear need for revenue, and they're saying the wealthiest people should contribute more. On the other side, you've got political caution, and let's be honest, pressure from the people who actually have that wealth. And hovering all of it is New York City, where leaders are dealing with massive budget gaps and pushing their own tax-the-rich proposals just to keep basic services running. So this isn't theoretical. This is about whether childcare gets funded, whether transit improves, whether schools and healthcare systems get the resources they need. And as billboards pressuring Governor Hochul to tax the rich go up along highways in Albany, a new Siena University poll takes the temperature of how New Yorkers feel about taxing the rich. Just take a guess. Quote, the answer is a clear yes. 53% of voters say absolutely yes. The legislature and governor should pass that bill, said Stephen Greenberg of the Siena Research Institute at the university. Only 30% of New Yorkers say no. Those are statewide numbers. If we look at just New York City alone, 64% of New York City voters say yes. And that changes the equation. Because for decades, the dominant idea in American politics was that taxing the rich was dangerous, economically and politically. Now, that consensus is cracking, not just inside the legislature, but among voters themselves. So the question isn't whether the idea has support, it does. And this past Sunday, Bernie called on Governor Hochul to raise taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers at a rally at Lehman College in the Bronx that drew at least 2,000 people.
Today, I would ask Governor Hochul, listen to where the people are at. The people of this city, the people of this state, the people of this country do not want to see our kids go hungry, do not want to see people sleep out on the street, lack health care. They want the very rich to start paying their fair share of taxes. And I would hope that the governor joins the vast majority of the people who want to see that happen.
So at the end of the day, this isn't just an economic debate, it's a power struggle. Who does the government actually work for? The people who need public services to survive? Or the people wealthy enough to threaten leaving if they're asked to pay more? And until that question gets answered clearly, this fight isn't going anywhere. And speaking of which, Oracle CEO Larry Ellison's net worth is approximately $188 billion, give or take a few B's. And what's happening at Oracle Corporation right now isn't just a company story. It's a preview, a warning, and maybe even a blueprint for how corporations plan to treat workers in the age of AI. It came out this week that Oracle has begun laying off thousands of employees, possibly as many as 30,000 people globally, in what could be the largest job cut in the company's history. And here's how it happened. Workers didn't get meetings, they didn't get conversations, they didn't even get a heads up. They woke up to emails, early morning around 6 a.m., a message from Oracle leadership telling them their jobs were gone.
We are sharing some difficult news regarding your position. After careful consideration of Oracle's current business needs, we have made the decision to eliminate your role as part of a broader organizational change. As a result, today is your last working day. We are grateful for your dedication, hard work, and the impact you have made during your time with us. After signing your termination paperwork, you will be eligible to receive a severance package subject to the terms and conditions of the severance plan. You will receive an email from DocuSign to your Oracle email address with details on your severance and termination date. Immediate action required. To receive important follow-up information, including FAQs and separation documents to help you through this transition, you must provide a personal email address. Please click here to submit a personal email address immediately. If you make a submission error, please resubmit a new form. Please note, the personal email address will only be used for correspondence regarding separation-related information and severance agreements. Access to your computer, email, voicemail, and files will be deactivated soon, and you will be unable to log into your computer. As a reminder, you are prohibited from downloading, copying, or retaining, including emailing yourself, any Oracle confidential information. Thank you for your contributions to our organization. If you have additional questions, please reach out to the HR team via the Ask HR page or at 888-404-2494. Oracle Leadership.
That's it. No transition, no dignity. Just log out. Because right after that email, your access is cut off. Computer, files, email, gone. Now here's where it gets even more important. This isn't happening because Oracle is failing. In fact, the company just reported what it called an exceptional quarter. Revenue's up, expectations exceeded. So why cut tens of thousands of jobs? Because of AI. Oracle is pouring massive amounts of money into building AI data centers, the infrastructure that powers things like machine learning, automation, and tools that can replace human labor. And to fund that, they're cutting workers. Analysts estimate these layoffs could impact about 18% of the workforce, not because the work disappeared overnight, but because the company is betting that AI can do it cheaper. In fact, Oracle's already been experimenting with AI systems doing routine database administration, jobs that used to require entire teams of engineers. Think about that. You train, you build a career, you help a company grow, and then one day you're replaced not by another worker, but by a system the company invested in using the profits you helped generate. And let's zoom out, because this isn't just Oracle. This is a pattern. Across the tech industry, companies are cutting jobs while ramping up AI spending. Workers are being told this is innovation, efficiency, the future. But let's call it what it is. A transfer of power from workers to capital, from people to systems that don't need wages, benefits, or rights. And maybe the most disturbing part, how normalized this is becoming. Layoffs by email, mass firings with no human conversation, decisions made at the top, executed instantly, felt by workers everywhere. Because when a company can cut thousands of people before breakfast, it tells you exactly how disposable those workers are in their eyes. Remember this moment. Not the headlines, not the buzzwords, the reality. Thousands of workers gone with an email so a corporation can double down on machines. That's the model. That's the plan. And unless workers organize around AI right now, the future won't be automated. It'll be emptied. So step back and look at all of this together. The rising cost of simply existing, the warning signs flashing across the economy, the attacks on unions, the layoffs justified by innovation, and the quiet expectation that workers will just absorb it all. You start to see the pattern. This isn't a series of disconnected stories as usual. It's one story. A system that shifts the burden downward every time there's pressure, whether it's war, inflation, or technological change, while the people at the top consolidate more control, more wealth, and more leverage. So $4 gas isn't just about oil. Mass layoffs aren't just about efficiency. Union fights aren't just about contracts. They're all about power. Who has it and who's expected to live without it. And right now, the message coming from corporations and political leaders is pretty clear. Keep things running, keep paying more, keep adapting, and don't expect a say in how any of it works. But what you're starting to see, whether it's workers forcing Amazon to back down, union members holding the line in lockouts, or growing calls for strikes and mass action, is a different message pushing back. That the people who make everything run don't have to stay on the sidelines. That the system only works as long as workers keep it working. And that if enough people decide to withdraw their labor, their spending, their participation, even briefly, it changes the equation. So the real question isn't whether things are getting more expensive, or more unstable, or more automated. They are. The question is what happens when workers stop accepting that as the cost of doing business. Because if this moment turns into something bigger, if frustration turns into coordination, and coordination turns into action, then this isn't just another cycle, it's a turning point. And we're a lot closer to finding that out than most people probably think. Well, that does it for this episode. If you like what you hear, give a rate or review on your favorite podcast app to help me grow. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with over 200 labor shows you can check out at laborradionetwork.org. This has been the Labor Force Podcast. I'm Mike Strukin. Solidarity, always.